And now on This Week in Jacksonville, we tackle the historic Supreme Court ruling. Both cheers and anger moments after the announcement Friday, a ruling that overturns Roe versus Wade.
I'm so glad that the justices actually established the justice and the rule of law in this land, and that so many millions of lives will be saved by this decision.
This decision is an outrage. It's illegitimate. Abortion bans are illegitimate. Forced motherhood is illegitimate.
Following Friday's decision, women marched to the Supreme Court chanting, "We trust women, we won't go back," followed by President Joe Biden addressing the nation.
Many states in this country still recognize a woman to choose. So, if a woman lives in a state that restricts abortion, the Supreme Court's decision does not prevent her from traveling from her home state, that allows it.
And to talk about what this ruling means now and for what's next here in Florida, we've invited a couple of guests this morning. Rick Mullaney, our political analyst and the founder and director of the Public Policy Institute at Jacksonville University. Also with us, Brenda Priestley Jackson, city council member here in Jacksonville, former school board member, a local attorney. Let's begin here. This opinion published Friday means there is no longer a federal constitutional right to an abortion. Councilwoman, this is an about-face after almost 50 years of what Roe versus Wade meant.
Yeah, it's something I think was anticipated after the leaked Supreme Court opinion last month, but it makes it no less devastating to actually see it issued today. The notion that a constitutional right, a fundamental interest for ladies is no longer in existence. We tend to think constitutional rights, once established, don't go away. And this opinion kind of says, no, we're going to push that back to the states and let them decide. We want to talk a little bit about what goes into this. And there are three tiers that we'll be discussing. This one kind of focusing on that legal portion. Rick, it's been called the most consequential Supreme Court decision in decades. Clearly, this transforms what we know about women's reproductive health in America. The legal issue, because the opinion by Justice Alito said, matter of fact, we've got it, I can show you here. He said Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision had damaging consequences. It's time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives. He also said, far from bringing out a national settlement on the abortion issue, Roe and Casey have inflamed debate and deepened division. So just on that legal component, the justice here is saying legally that it wasn't a constitutional right.
Kent, I think it's difficult, but I think it's very important to separate out the legal issue from the policy issue, from the political issue. And on the legal issue, let's go back to 1973. In 1973, Roe versus Wade, for the first time in the history of the country, established a constitutional right to an abortion in 1973. Two important things to keep in mind in particular. One is they said that was based on a right to privacy from a penumbra of rights. It wasn't directly in the Constitution, but as a right to privacy based on the First, the Fourth, the Ninth, and other amendments. And second, they said there was a trimester system in which the first trimester you could have an abortion, the second trimester it could be regulated, and in the third trimester you could ban it. What happened 20 years later, however, is that Planned Parenthood versus Casey basically changed Roe in some fundamental ways. It maintained the constitutional right to an abortion for a woman, but it rejected the notion of a privacy and shifted away from a privacy right to the 14th Amendment due process clause liberty right. And this is important because the court took it on Friday. And what they said is under the 14th Amendment due process, there is a substantive right to an abortion. It is a fundamental right. That was a shift away from the reasoning in Roe. And second, they did away with the trimester framework and they went to a viability test, which is basically 24 weeks. What you saw on Friday is that Justice Alito and the court directly took on Casey and Roe and said they're simply wrong. There's nothing in the Constitution that says there's a right to an abortion. It is not a fundamental right. They took a look at the 14th Amendment due process clause, a more conservative majority, and on the legal issue, they felt they had to correct what they believed was an opinion that was wrong, and they overturned both Roe and Casey, Casey being the leading case today.
So, Counsel, when we saw that the vote was 5-3-1, so clearly not unanimous, and clearly even some division. It wasn't here's in favor, here's and against this. The Chief Justice saying that Chief Justice Roberts said he didn't join the majority and wrote a concurring opinion that he wouldn't have overturned Roe instead he would only upheld this Mississippi law that was really the fulcrum of bringing this to the Supreme Court. What are your thoughts here? Do we have justices who clearly don't see the Constitution the same way? Is that accurate?
Well, I definitely think it's accurate. And I think I want to go back to, in terms of this interpretation, these conversations were had during the confirmation process for the justices. And many of them affirmed during that process that they thought Roe was established, that Casey was established. Clearly, this ruling, and again, it's 213 pages, so I haven't made it through all 213 pages.
Nor have I.
Just skimmed it. Clearly, that is not what they decided today. And the reality is, if this decision is one that's left to the states, right? If this is what we're saying, basically, state by state, you can decide on how this is going to be determined and what the reproductive rights are for ladies or females in your state. We have never had that be a viable means of addressing fundamental or essential rights in this country. I mean, we don't. That's this whole federal versus state interest. I don't know how you step back from something that is of constitutional, of legal precedent. And we know precedent, we rely on that. That is how we govern, that is how we manage. And you throw that out and say, no, that we're not going to find it grounded in the Constitution. We think it's more appropriately a political question, because that's what it is when you say it should go to the states. It's a political question. And we're going to let the state legislatures decide on how we're going to deal with that issue. Clearly difference of opinion, but I think the core of the impact to women's reproductive health and opportunity and autonomy has been eviscerated by today's decision.
So I do want to show you some of the reaction that came in on Friday in a statement by the Florida Senate President. He's a Republican, Wilton Simpson. He said, in part here, as an adopted child myself, I'm grateful for this decision. The court is finally righting a grievous wrong. He also went on to say, I particularly like that the court mentions in outlining views of pro-life Americans, a woman who puts her newborn up for adoption today has little reason to fear that the baby will not find a suitable home. That's certainly the case here in Florida. Florida is a state that values life. Now, let me show you what Nikki Fried said. The agriculture commissioner is a Democrat, also a candidate for governor, but she released a statement Friday right after the decision was announced. And that said, in part, this is a tragic day for women in America. The freedom to make our own choices about our lives, our bodies, and our health care is fundamental to our humanity. It's absolutely devastating to have those rights taken away. It's not an exaggeration to say that women and girls will die as a result of this decision. Women will now be forced to stay with abusive partners, to carry dangerous and unviable pregnancies to term, to be refused life-saving medical care, to seek out unsafe and illegal ways to have an abortion, to bear children conceived through rape and incest, to endure a host of other indignities too varied and disturbing to describe. It will have a catastrophic effect on women's economic prospects and participation in the workforce. So I'd like to hear from both of you, and we'll move on to another segment after this. But Rick, those are described consequences of the ruling. Should that impact what the ruling is if the Supreme Court justices, that full body of 9, is looking at just the legal case making there, or the legal ruling or interpretation of the Constitution?
It's a great question, Kent, and that's why it's so important to separate out the legal issue and the policy issue. And by the way, on the 5-3-1 decision, technically speaking, it's 6-3, and what Justice Roberts did was a concurring opinion. And in his opinion, he said he would have upheld the Mississippi law, but he wouldn't have done it in the way the majority had by overturning Roe and Casey so explicitly. Very similar to Justice Ginsburg, who said on Roe versus Wade she would not have done what have happened in Roe versus Wade because the Texas statute could have been overturned on much more limited grounds. So I do want to go back to the fundamentals of the legal opinion. The courts, as an umpire in a baseball game, we're making a legal call as to whether the United States Constitution provides a constitutional right for an abortion. They found that it did not. The other thing they found is that the states are free to have, in fact, should have this policy debate, because on the policy question, there are competing interests here. And Nikki Fried very articulately described women's health issues, as has the councilwoman. But there is the other side that Mississippi brought up, and that is, as they called it in their brief, the life of the unborn, the life of the fetus, the right to life. These are competing interests that different states will weigh differently. Some states, for example, are going to allow abortion up until the ninth month, through the ninth month. Some states may have a complete ban. Others, like Florida, are at 15 weeks. Mississippi's at 15 weeks. But it's an example of how passionate the issues are, but also how different states will weigh this differently. I think you're going to hear some very articulate discussions on the impact on women. You're also going to hear some very big discussions on the impact on the unborn and the fetus and the right to life. The passion isn't going to go away. The politics isn't going to go away. But what the Supreme Court did on Friday was talk about the U.S. Constitution and the constitutional right to abortion. They said no, so now it shifts to the states.
So I want to talk about that policy and the impact, and we'll do that when we come back from a short commercial, but still so much more to talk about. We'll continue the conversation of Roe versus Wade being overturned next on This Week in Jacksonville.
A short while ago, an injured worker left me a message that said, "You probably won't call me back, I'm just a nobody." Those words stunned me, and I called him right back. Nobody's a nobody, and no one deserves a better firm than you. After my brother Tim's accident, I set out to build an injury firm my own family would hire. And today, as America's largest injury firm, there is no other firm I would hire. All law firms are not the same. There's only one you, there's only one Morgan & Morgan.
Perseverance, dedication, and long hours. That is what it takes to succeed on the field and when building a city. Reggie and the rest of the Gaffneys learned this lesson from their parents, and they carried it with them onto the fields at FAMU, the University of Florida, the NFL, and into the Jacksonville City Council. Reggie Gaffney will put in the work again as your state senator. No one will work harder for Jacksonville than Team Gaffney. Vote Reggie Gaffney for Florida Senate District 5.
My name is Reggie Gaffney, and I approve this message.
Exact Track 4D, tracking and dissecting storms down to your street.
You can get your smile back today. At Affordable Dentures and Implants, we make high-quality tooth replacement affordable for everyone. So whether it's a single tooth, full dentures, or life-changing dental implants, we have an experienced dentist who can help you go ahead and smile. Click or call to schedule your new smile consultation today.
Go ahead and smile.
Just a reminder that the rocket's red glare and the bombs bursting in air are brought to you this and every 4th of July by Phantom Fireworks. Visit fireworks.com for a location near you.
You had me at Allison 10-speed transmission. Premium features available on GMC Sierra Heavy Duty. Step up to GMC with 0% financing on Sierra Heavy Duty models. GMC, we are professional grade.
Farah and Farah did give me hope. They did. I feel I had somebody in my corner. I made the right choice calling Farah and Farah.
The Morning Show on Channel 4 makes mornings happen.
People always tell us we love how connected you are to the community.
Yes, come be part of our community. We have a lot of fun, but we won't waste your time. We have the answers to the questions you care about the most.
Answers that can help keep your family safe. Like tracking storms in your neighborhood.
And getting you wherever you're headed on time. Join us.
The Morning Show on Channel 4 makes mornings happen. You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
Historic ruling by the Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade just this past Friday. So let's pick up this conversation. We were talking about the constitutional issue, and then we wanted to get into policy, and you say there's a clear line that comes from that. Right?
There's a clear line from the policy, from the constitutional issues to policy. So when we think of constitutional law and we think of legal precedent, we think of those rights that have been established, that our highest court has determined that these are the rights that we all possess, and we think of them as well established. That fuels policy. So that it filters down to what policies are crafted based on that. I am a product of Roe versus Wade because I was barely 7 years old when that decision came down, but it governed so much of how my mother reared me and father and what opportunities she told me were available to me, what decisions I was free to make, you know, how my reproductive health and choices were to be mine and informed, right? And so I was thinking on the way over here, I have a book on my shelf that my mother gave me when I was probably 8 years old. It came out in the mid-'70s. It's entitled "What Every Girl Should Know About Contraception, Sterilization, and Abortion." And I gave the same book to my daughters. Years later, it was outdated. But that's what she gave me at about 7 or 8 years old to read. And said, you know, I'm named after my mom, but she called me Prissy. You got questions, talk to me about it. So I did. And so my daughters came of age with those same opportunities, understanding that they were entitled to their reproductive autonomy, that their opportunities would be limitless in terms of if they made a decision or something happened, that they should not be forced to carry a pregnancy to term if it was not in their best interest, health-wise, mentally, or financially, up to a point. The concept that my daughters, who are 33 and 21, my 21-year-old is a lifeguard, and she was calling me crying. She's devastated. And this is not because she's some philosophical loose woman. You know, she's not cavalier. It's just because, Mom, what does this mean? Well, it means, Kaya, for you probably, if something were to happen, you have the resources to go someplace else, to another state, to do whatever you felt was in your best interest. What it means for a lot of women, particularly women of color, who are socioeconomically challenged, is that they will be denied that opportunity to make those decisions that are fundamental to their reproductive health, that they have been deemed a vessel, forced to carry a pregnancy to term for whatever reasons, regardless of how they came to be pregnant, regardless of the impact on their life. That is hard to imagine. I thought we were no longer property. You know, women were property at one time. So I thought that was no longer the standard, but this decision makes you feel that just maybe that's what we're dealing with, you know.
So clearly, impact, and to what Rick mentioned last segment, I mean, people are very passionate about this, and and at the same time, there's the other side who's saying, hey, this is good policy because religious beliefs, et cetera. They say we're protecting lives by doing this. So what's the next step on the policy if people want to reinforce what is now saying against abortion, or if they want to reinforce, hey, there needs to be this legal right? What happens next on the policy side, Rick?
Well, what should be clear is that the court shouldn't be expressing its policy preferences or making a policy decision. They were making a legal decision and a constitutional one. And the councilwoman brings up an important point where we could talk about in terms of stare decisis and precedent, and when you follow precedent and when you overturn precedent. And clearly, and we could talk about this separately, but the most famous example of overturning precedent was in Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 under the Equal Protection Clause, when they found that separate but equal was inherently unconstitutional, overturning Plessy versus Ferguson from 1896. Some forget that it used to be that the federal government and state governments couldn't regulate economic conditions such as minimum wage and how many hours you were working. That's because the Supreme Court in 1905 in Lochner versus New York established a fundamental constitutional liberty right for employers to do that, until the Supreme Court reversed themselves in 1937. So there are times that stare decisis is not absolute, but stare decisis is important. But then, as the councilwoman points out importantly, now you have this discussion on the consequences for women and for others who talk about the rights of fetus, and this discussion will shift to the legislative bodies in each of the individual states. This voice, these policies, will have to be weighed and heard, and you're going to see this discussion happening throughout the country. And already you can see a divide in the country because there are these competing, passionate interests at stake, and you're going to see some states, like I said, may go to one extreme of banning abortions completely. Others go to the extent you can have an abortion to the 9th month. The vast, vast majority are going to fall in between. Most public opinion, and 90% of abortions are in the first trimester. And I think you're going to see that 15-week mark in Mississippi become somewhat of a norm. But Kent, you can expect this policy debate, outside of the legal issue, the policy debate to continue raging with great passions on both sides.
We're going to get to that kind of third leg of the stool here, that other component. Stay with us. We're going to continue our conversation, the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, and the political ramifications. That's next on This Week in Jacksonville.
Vacation in your own backyard with patio sets up to 70% off only at Splash. Dining sets, sitting groups, the entire stock up to 70% off. Plus zero interest financing available. Get your backyard vacation ready and save now at Splash.
Attention railroad workers, if you've been diagnosed with cancer, it may be linked to your job and you may be entitled to compensation. There is a limited time under the law to file a claim. Let us help you. Call 1-800-LAW-HELP. That's 1-800-LAW-HELP.
Chief Val Demings.
An impressive history of public service.
Protect and serve Florida, that's what I've done. As a police officer and as chief.
Under her leadership,
crime is down 40%.
The most dramatic decrease in violent crime.
In the Senate, I'll protect Florida from bad ideas, like defunding the police. That's just crazy. I am Val Demings, and I approve this message because Florida, it's time to send a cop on the beat to the Senate.
We want people to feel that when they call Herald and Herald, they're calling Herald and Herald. They're not calling a satellite office or call center or getting an automated phone system. We are with our clients, fighting for our clients, handling the process ourselves, and not asking others to do that for us. I mean, we feel like we made the right decision to be the size that we are, large enough to take on anyone, but small enough to care and really know our clients.
Ever thought about why we take trips? They allow us to reconnect with ourselves, and we go on them for one reason: the memories. Memories that inspire stories, and stories that become legacies. Join us as we celebrate ours during the General RV 60th Anniversary Sales Event with travel trailers as low as $160 a month and savings up to $60,000 on motorhomes. No matter where your next trip takes you, come home with a story. June 22nd through 26th, only at General RV.
Oh, it looks like we're in a screensaver.
We need to go higher. Higher. Definitely higher.
We're like yodeling high.
Yodeling?
No, don't do that.
We should go even higher. Yeah, let's do it. Oh. I'm good. Me too.
Adventure has a new look.
Let's go lower. Lower. That sounds good.
Discover more in the all-new Subaru Outback Wilderness. Love. It's what makes Subaru, Subaru.
If you served in the military between 2003 and 2015, this message is for you. Hearing loss and tinnitus have been linked to defective earplugs. If you've suffered hearing issues after serving in the military, call 1-800-LAW-FIRM now to see if you qualify for compensation.
Looking for a hot tub? Look no further than Splash. All hot tubs on sale as low as $89 a month. Truckloads of hot tubs arriving monthly, so come reserve yours today. With zero interest financing, get your backyard vacation ready at Splash.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville on Channel 4.
Thanks for staying with us. Brenda Priestley-Jackson, city councilwoman and an attorney here in Jacksonville. Rick Mullaney is with us, so Public Policy Institute director and founder at JU. Let's talk about something we often talk about on our show, politics. How does this ruling for the Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade affect what we're going to see from those running for office this summer and this fall?
Kent, in short, it is a political earthquake. This is one of the most significant opinions in the history of the U.S. Supreme Court. It's going to be talked about for decades legally. You're going to have the discussion continue on the policy side. But in terms of sheer politics, from now through the midterms and through 2024, this is here's a technical term, a really big deal. Right. This is a big deal. For the Democrats in particular, it's potentially helpful in two ways. One is to motivate their voters and to motivate their base to turn out at the polls, because elections are about turnout. But the second, and this is an opportunity, quite frankly, is to change the topic, to change it from inflation. Inflation for the Democrats right now is a loser, and the economy is a loser. It's a challenge, and you can see that in the president's poll ratings, really, really low, and it's the number one issue for most people right now is inflation and the economy. This, however, raises something fundamental, something personal, something important, and you already saw in the comments of Nancy Pelosi and in the president on Friday that this is going to be something that they want the people to vote on. So they're going to focus on this issue, not inflation, and they're going to try to motivate their base to turn out. The Republicans have to be a little bit careful what you pray for sometimes, because now you're going to have to, this issue is one that will be emotional and significant, and they want the topic to be inflation. The Democrats are going to try to motivate their voters to get out.
Councilwoman, should this be a topic for candidates to be talking about, regardless which side they're on during the course of this summer and fall?
Well, it is. It's the reality of now times. And so, you know, this is not something that happens in isolation. And I want to make a real clear statement when we talk about it being political. You know, I am a woman of Christian faith, strong faith, and I believe in a woman's reproductive autonomy. Let me be really clear, because there's this notion that those of us who believe in a woman's reproductive autonomy are not Christians of strong faith. I'm a long African Methodist Episcopalian, right, and have been. The politics of this now is going to be something to galvanize. I am, again, not really shocked by the ruling today, because I believe the leak last month was intentional. I believe that was the water over the dam to get us ready for today. Rick would know far better than I. That's not usually what happens. We don't get leaked Supreme Court.
It is very unusual.
It's not
and I never thought it was a leak really from those who were pro-choice. I didn't. I'm going to be real clear. I was like, let's go on and test the waters now, because something else hot's going to come out a little later. And so it should motivate folks to go out to the polls and vote, because it's, you know, you cannot be focused on inflation, and you cannot be focused on all of these other abstract issues if you are not free to engage in our economy. This directly relates to a woman's ability to freely engage in the economy. It does. A denial of an opportunity and a choice. A denial of any female being able to say, what is in my best interest going forward with reasonable restraints. So folks better understand, I tweeted earlier, you're saying first they came for. So first they came for Roe. What are they coming for next? Is it going to be same-gender marriage?
And the they you're referring to is the conservative party?
Well, the Supreme Court, and so understand the local political decision of state legislatures and what they will decide, which filters to, city councils, but it all goes up to the federal as well, right? Literally. So it has significant implications, and I want to call out Mississippi. Now, my husband...
Final 30 seconds, by the way.
Yeah, family's from Mississippi, right, before they migrated to New Jersey and back. I want Mississippi to have the same energy to take care of these children they're forcing women to bring into this world, and Florida, that they have in trying to make certain they come here. So support education, support affordable housing, support good health care and everything else, which some places are silent on and don't do their best.
21 different states have laws or constitutional amendments already in place that are similar to what you just described. Rick Mullaney, I appreciate your time. Brenda Priestley Jackson, thank you very much. Appreciate helping people understand what we're going through here in light of what happened on Friday. Thanks for your time. In 2 weeks, the new City Council president will join us. Terrence Freeman, he plans to be here. We're also working to bring you more of the candidates ahead of that primary election scheduled for August in Florida. This Week in Jacksonville airs each Sunday morning at this time. I'm Kent Justice. Thanks for watching On Air on Channel 4 and the CW17. And you'll find episodes online at news4jax.com or streaming on News4Jax Plus.
See why every day more people are choosing News4Jax, Northeast Florida and South Georgia's #1 source for local news.